That's Walter White from Breaking Bad. If you haven't seen Breaking Bad, you suck, basically. But
I haven't seen it. I guess I suck.
You do suck. Well, welcome to Boxing During Dinner. David, today's April Fool's Day. And I could go on and tell you guys that, Manny Pacquiao's fighting Floyd Mayweather is some stupid April Fool's joke. But today, that's probably the cruelest April Fool's joke I've ever experienced. All over the internet, on Twitter and Facebook, people kept saying that In-N-Out Burger was coming to Miami. Which right away I knew it wasn't true because it was April Fool's Day, and that one really hurt. And it hurt Alex as well.
And that's also loaded with irony because we're here at Energy Kitchen once again, which actually serves a much healthier version of the burger. Several options, in fact, but I know that you and Alex are big fans of In-N-Out Burger. You should be happy for your waistlines, at least, that Energy Kitchen will be here and In-N-Out won't.
Right, but Energy Kitchen I could drive to, and it's here. I gotta fly to a West Coast city to go to In-N-Out Burger. But anyway, David, enough of In-N-Out Burger because there's tons to talk about in this episode. Rios Alvarado. I can't say we called it. Everybody called it. Everybody knew it was going to be a war. It was what everybody expected. Maybe the only thing that I didn't expect was Alvarado fighting the way he did in the later part of the fight, which neutralized Rios and won him the fight.
Yeah, it's interesting. You want to hope that you're going to get even close to what you had the first time around in terms of the quality of the fight, but who actually, I was a little hesitant to think that, look, we just had Bradley Provodnikov. There's no chance that they actually put on just as good of a show as they did the first time, because in boxing, everything good that we want to happen never happens. Well, it happened. Like Alvarado, in the third round, well, for starters, in the second round, I thought Alvarado was iced by the way that he was fighting and the way Rios had caught him. I thought for sure the fight was over.
He was here with a jab.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that too. Out of all the punches that Rios threw, it was a stiff left jab that buckled him at the knees. Then in the third round, Alvarado comes back and nearly decks out, Rios. And then the middle rounds, basically 3 to 5 and stuff like that, 3 to 6, Rios started to, kind of get Alvarado into the fight that he wanted and trading. But Alvarado stuck to his plan through and through and ended up boxing towards the end of the fight and absolutely. We had a couple people comment on our Facebook page that they still feel like Rios got a gift on the cards, and I tend to agree. I think this fight was not as close as the scorecards indicated. I think that Alvarado won by 3 to 4 rounds, but the fact of the matter is, at least all the cards saw what the end result was, and Mike Alvarado definitely earned this victory in an incredible war. We're blessed as boxing fans to have seen it.
Yeah, I think 116, 112, 115, 113 was absolutely fine. Oh, I know that girl.
Friend of ours, just walked by.
But hey. Anyway, before we start, keep talking about those later rounds in which Alvarado won this fight. Going back to that second round when Rios hurt Alvarado with that jab. Like you said earlier, I kept on thinking after all the punches he landed in the first fight, it could be a jab that knocks out Mike Alvarado. I couldn't believe it, but these guys are warriors. Just the fact that it went 12 rounds is an upset. It's unbelievable that the fight went 12 because even at work, I kept on telling people that we were watching the fight together, and I was telling them, hey, you know what? This one thing's for sure, this won't go 12, right. And it did go 12.
Yeah.
And now I want to see 12 more. It's an exciting fight. There's like you said, there's a big room for disappointment when it comes to a fight like that. But then there's also, those special fights like Riddick Bowe and Evander Holyfield, and Arturo Gatti and Ward and Zeo Graziano way back in the day. These guys are those epic fighters that are going to do the trilogy or the 4 fights or the 5 fights. They're just incredible together, and I can't see them fighting anybody else right now other than each other.
Well, it's, of course they are going to fight other people, and Bob Arum says that he wants them to have interim fights before they do it a third time. But think about it. When these guys go head-to-head, who are they going to make more money off of outside of each other? It's not an ideal proposition, but in a fight fan's perfect world, these guys would fight every 6 months for the rest of their careers until it was over. Absolutely breathtaking from start to finish. I was exhausted by 9 o'clock that night when the fight started with the Terrence Crawford fight against Bryce Prescott. I was still a little tired. By the time the Rios Alvarado fight was over, I had a hard time falling asleep. Absolutely incredible.
And I think the loser in all this, David, is Manny Pacquiao, because in December, Manny Pacquiao, when he fought Juan Manuel Marquez, Brandon Rios was there at the card, and it was a visibly upset Brandon Rios after that result. because, you know, out the window went a lot of money to fight Manny Pacquiao. That fight was being talked about. It was as close to being made as any fight could be close to being made. And all of a sudden, you know, Pacquiao decides he wants to fight again. It's not going to be fighting Juan Manuel Marquez. So the option was Brandon Rios if he beats Mike Alvarado, which he didn't. And now Angel Heredia, who does the conditioning for Juan Manuel Marquez, says Marquez is going to fight Tim Bradley.
Right.
So who the hell does Pacquiao fight?
Well, it's interesting. You know, let's look at examples of fights that were supposed to get made when, you know, one guy was supposed to beat the other guy. That was supposed to happen when Zab Judah was supposed to fight Floyd Mayweather the first time, and then Judah got beaten up by Carlos Baldomir. At the end of the day, they realized there was still too much money to be made in that fight, and the fight got made, you know, eventually anyway. And there are several other examples of that in boxing history, and many of them as recent, you know, as fights like with Miguel Cotto, who's probably going to end up fighting Canelo in the fall, right, win or lose and stuff like that. And so, fight does he deserve? I don't think so. But I tend to think that with Pacquiao and Rios both coming off of losses.
But in your heart, you do think so.
Yeah, in my heart, I definitely think that Cotto deserves it. But I do believe that Rios versus Pacquiao is still absolutely a makeable fight. These guys are both coming off contested losses. Yes, Pacquiao got knocked out cold, but he was winning that fight before he did. You know, there's a storyline to be sold either way. Bob Arum knows that he's going to make money on this fight. Bob Arum has never stopped a good storyline of his own creation just because, right, you know, there was a certain obstacle in the way. I
mean, it almost becomes a crossroads fight, except, you know, not really, because Rio still has a long career ahead if, you know, right, if he doesn't take that much punishment, which, you know, is a big question mark in itself. But, yeah, it does create a storyline for Pacquiao Rios, and it still could happen. But does Juan Manuel Marquez fighting Bradley, does that interest you at all, or do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, after the Provodnikov fight, a lot of people didn't think Bradley won that fight. I thought Bradley won that fight. But, you know, who am I? Just
You're my friend Armando.
Yes. But, and Provodnikov, you know, he might be a guy that might fight Mike Alvarado or Brandon Rios or Manny Pacquiao. You never know. I mean, it's like endless possibilities in these weight divisions. You know, I put the question mark, who will Manny Pacquiao fight, just because Manny Pacquiao isn't going to fight a bottom of the barrel guy.
Right. He's
going to fight a big, but there are options in you know, from 140 to 154. But we got to move on, because talking about 140 to 154, Robert Guerrero gets arrested the day after we filmed Boxing During Dinner last week. And it's just, you know, a guy trying to do the right thing, not knowing the laws. I think this will go away. You know, he'll get a slap on the wrist, as much as you could, you know, call it a slap on the wrist if it's a probation or whatever. But I don't think he'll serve any time. You know, he wasn't trying to hurt anybody, didn't have any ammunition, no bullets. It was just a dumb thing to do, but, you know, we are humans, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, exactly. You would think that out of all the people in Guerrero's entourage at this point, ahead of his biggest fight, he would have a little bit more vetting around him, if you will, about his decisions. And so this is, you know, sadly, just a stupid oversight on his part.
And in New York State.
Right. And if you're unaware of what exactly it is we're referring to, if you've been sleeping under a boxing rock, Robert Guerrero was arrested at JFK Airport last Tuesday, for bringing in a firearm and checking it.
Thursday.
It was Thursday? It was Thursday, for checking in a firearm at JFK Airport. He's up for 4 felony charges for gun possession, which is illegal in the state of New York. Legal in his home state, but not in New York. He brought the firearm in from the state of Virginia, apparently from a connecting flight before. So Guerrero's trial date is May 14th. It doesn't interfere with the Mayweather fight. I know this is a little crass of me, but since it doesn't interfere with the fight, I really don't care what happens afterwards.
No, me neither. And, you know, if you go back a few years, you know, to the beginning of Floyd Mayweather's career, when he fought Diego Corrales, it was his first big fight. Diego Corrales was about to go to prison for hitting his estranged wife at the time. James Prince, who was Mayweather's manager, brought her to the fight, had her ringside for the fight. Like, this is the woman you beat up. You're going to go to jail after this fight. And Mayweather kicked his butt. Obviously, years later, it was Mayweather allegedly hitting a woman. But, you know, Robert Guerrero didn't hit anybody. He didn't commit, you know, I guess it's a crime, but had the gun in a box, tried to do the right thing, said he wanted to check it in. Even the cop said, I felt bad for the guy. The guy was just trying to do the right thing. You know, the district attorney had a different view of it. He said they're gonna try to prosecute it to the high. And at least he didn't shoot himself in the leg like Plaxico Burress, But but going back to fights and that don't involve any guns or beating up of women, Gennady Golovkin, who's a favorite of boxing during dinner. You're right. This guy, I mean, you talk about boxers. If they hit somebody outside of the ring, it's assault with a deadly weapon because they're professional boxers. This guy commits assault with a deadly weapon inside the ring. I mean, this guy he's incredible. I know a lot of people are going to say he hasn't fought anybody because Ishida was coming up in weight, but he had never been knocked out. And the way he knocked him out was beyond incredible. This is a guy that keeps impressing with each single fight, and he just needs to fight the big boys in the division. He's more than ready.
Anybody who's sleeping on Golovkin is sleeping because this guy's... Let's say that you think there are any deficiency in his skills. His power changes fights, and there are people who've sparred him who say he hits harder than heavyweights. He's sparred with heavyweights, and they're saying Golovkin hits harder than any of those guys that they're sparring with for heavyweight fights. So, what he did to Ishida didn't even seem like his most powerful punch, and you saw the reaction that Ishida had from, you don't want to call it a reaction, it was an involuntary reaction to that punch where Ishida was literally left just clueless, knocked unconscious basically on the ropes, and for several seconds it took them to get him up and over. But the sky's the limit for Golovkin. Here's the problem: no one with a big name is gonna fight this guy because of that power.
Chavez won't fight him.
Chavez won't fight him. He says he'll go from 54 to 68, but who's gonna want to take this guy on? I don't think anybody.
I mean, does Andre Ward fight him? I mean, that could be a possibility, but it becomes a matter of do you sell that now? A fight between Andre Ward and Martinez, where Andre Ward and even Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. would probably be a bigger money fight at this point. Gennady Golovkin, I mean, he commits the crime of being too good. Yeah. And, you go back to, Winky Wright, when he was making fighters look stupid and nobody wanted to fight him. And Costa Zoo, when, the big names in the division, I mean, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. fought him way late in his career just because he needed some money. And got his butt kicked, but fighters like Gennady Golovkin, nobody wants to fight him. I hope people do fight him, even if it's a guy from 154 to 168, 175, heavyweights. I don't care. I want to see this guy fight, and a guy that we're gonna see fight again because he did not test positive for a banned substance was Lamont Peterson. It was just a crazy story, David. We spoke early that day. We're talking about how stupid it was that Lamont Peterson gets caught yet again. Then later, the story gets retracted. He doesn't test positive. I mean, Lamont Peterson, I mean, he has a big gripe with the writers and Ring Magazine and anybody that's involved with the publication or the story leaking out.
Yeah, I would say so. This one came from Ring TV, and Lem Satterfield is usually a very credible writer within the industry, and he's the one who reported this, to the point where it was completely wrong. What's ultimately happened is that what was revealed is that there was an irregular test among one of the combatants in that fight, either Peterson or Holt. It came out that it was Peterson, and then come to find out it wasn't. Kendall Holt issued a statement today saying that his test came back as irregular. Now, of course, we're not the PED experts here, but what that apparently means within the testing standards that they signed up for was this is not a positive test, which would have indicated that he had obviously consciously tried to take, this what turns out to be a women's fertility drug.
The Manny Ramirez.
The Manny Ramirez, yes, it is the same drug. But essentially, there's another indication, and Kendall Holt is now having more medical tests because sometimes this hormone is produced within the body when there is maybe some sort of a medical ailment. Worst case scenario, in some scenarios, that ailment is cancer. Of course, we don't hope that that's what's happened to Kendall Holt, but consider the roller coaster of how this started. It's Lamont Peterson testing positive for PEDs. Now Kendall Holt might be, in need of some sort of a medical treatment because of a deficiency in his body. So it just goes to show you you can't always trust, especially on April Fool's Day, the things that you see on the internet. April Fool's joke is that there is no In-N-Out burger, and Lamont Peterson has not tested positive for PEDs.
No, and before we go, and I'm not saying Lem Satterfield did this, knowingly and maliciously. I mean, I know him. He's a very nice guy, very good guy, and I doubt that happened. But you go to other sports, like like in the NBA, Chris Broussard during the whole LeBron thing. Every day he had my source tells me he's going to the Bulls. My source tells me he's staying in Cleveland. My source tells me he's going to the Miami Heat. One of your sources is lying to you, bro.
Yeah.
And it's not fair to the fan. It's like, back then, and back then maybe it was like 15, 20 years ago, before the internet, people would actually check their sources and check that the stories were legit.
Right.
I mean, we both come from a journalism background, and we studied it, and Alex did too, and it's frustrating, that you see, now from here till the NFL draft. And by the way, we're gonna have Alex Marvez, who's an NFL expert, to analyze the draft. But aside from analyzing, I mean, you give these guys all this leeway to say, I'm hearing that the Dolphins are gonna draft X guy, or Detroit's gonna draft, Geno Smith or whatever. And at the end of the day, they're just guessing. And to like what degree do you hold them responsible for what they report? And reporting nowadays, it really doesn't exist. Unless somebody, I mean, and in Lem's case, I do believe somebody must have told him, hey, this is, you could go with it, 100% legit, and he just, got caught, being misled. But there's a lot of room for error. I mean, I see people posting stuff on the internet every day that I don't retweet because it's just absurd. Like Gennady Golovkin will fight X and Jermaine Taylor or whatever, but. It's just getting ridiculous. But David, tons of boxing coming up. There's a good card in China on Saturday, which I'll be watching. Good luck to our friend Wilfredo Vasquez Jr. And then the following week, Rigon Diao and Donaire, which will break down next week. And then Canelo Trout. Before you know it, Guerrero Mayweather. So it's a good time to be a boxing fan.
Sure is. Can't wait.